Huh. Well. One wu-lin after another, huh? I saw someone kind of comment on the video about NUXIA, and I kind of got my creative juices pumping. I've been doing a lot of complaining, so I think this is a good change of pace. NUXIA is one of the most unique gimmicks in the entire game, and at the same time, it is the worst gimmick in the entire game. This character is a struggle bus in itself, if you're facing people who have monitors over 35 Hz. So it's really no surprise that she has the lowest pick rate in the game. Now, do I have the stats to prove it?
No.
But if you ask anyone, who is the worst hero in the game, their tied answers are Lawbringer or NUXIA. Or their main if they're just full of ego. NUXIA was released with the entire wu-lin faction excluding Zanhu in the summer of 2018, and while most of the wu-lin cast were, really good at launch, NUXIA was just kind of there. She had her light spam and her traps really helped her out in the early game, but after the first couple of months of her being out, her traps became less and less effective. And this was a real major problem for NUXIA because this is all she had and still has to this day. She has no bash, no unblockable, no undodgeable. Compare that to the rest of the wu-lin today, and she's got the least amount of tender love and care. Now look, I'm all for heroes with kits that don't have the same amount of words as the Dr. Seuss books, but if you give characters so little options, it's no surprise that they will struggle over time. And the funny thing about the history video is there's actually really no history with NUXIA because, just like the title of the video, she's just abandoned. There's reasons that her balance changes are either, well, reverted or changed so little that I can talk about them from memory. To look at some of the changes, we first need to look about how her traps and how they worked, and they were not good. Basically, if you were guarding the same direction as a trap, a small animation would play, and after the animation, you would take damage. So then how would you avoid NUXIA traps in the early stages? Well, it was quite simple and there's a lot of options. You could change your guard stance, dodge the attack, throw a heavy attack earlier, throw a light attack through it, or the most toxic one, just emote. Since emoting drops your guard, this was an actual viable way to get around the traps. That is really lenient, by the way. That is super fucking lenient. Not to mention that during NUXIA's lifetime, a funny little exploit or bug was being abused by literally everybody, even myself. And I hate to even talk about it because saying the words give me shivers. Option selects. They were a nightmare for NUXIA players because it countered the trap and countered the heavy if the zone was faster or if it had hyper armor. If you don't know what option selects are or how they worked, basically if you threw a zone on the same timing of a parry, then you would parry an incoming attack. If the enemy feinted said attack and went for a GB, then the zone would come out and you'd hit them with a zone. Really frustrating to be playing for honor at a time like that. And to add a little bit of salt in the wound, if you had a character with, let's say, crushing counter properties, you beat trap and heavy attack at the same time. So no matter what option the NUXIA picked, if she didn't feint to pair the light crushing counter, they lost the trade. To look at the changes NUXIA got over the times, they weren't much, but I think I've had McDonald's DoorDash orders with more words than all of NUXIA's buffs combined. She had her damage buff to begin with, and then people really fucking hated that, so then Ubisoft reverted it months later. They sped up her traps and actually made them counter crushing counters. To me, this was a great change. Crushing counters is a defensive option and traps were designed to punish defensive playstyles. Then since NUXIA was struggling, they ended up giving her damage back. Lastly, we gotta talk about her deflect, and I bet you some of the NUXIA mains, all three of them went, is he not gonna talk about the deflect? Don't worry, I didn't forget. NUXIA's deflect was the only one in the game that didn't confirm any damage. Yes, you heard me right. It was a blockable deflect. Like what? Obviously, they changed this to be an unblockable, so yeah, NUXIA mains only had to deal with this for her, 3 years of having a useless deflect? Yippee, right? The longer the hero goes in a game without any balance changes to keep them viable in the game, the worse a hero will become. Unless you're Warlord, because for some fucking reason, he's stayed a solid hero since God created the fucking Earth and Adam and Eve. Not to say everything about NUXIA is bad, if anything, there are some good aspects of her, and we're gonna get to those later. Let's, start off with a positive note and look at NUXIA's pros, because, we all need a bit of positivity if we're playing NUXIA. She's got 400 MS chain lights. To the casual community, this can be a really good tool to see if people are asleep at the wheel. I'm the best player in the world. Her damage on traps is pretty respectable and something you actually have to be scared of, especially if zone traps hitting you, because that shit hits harder than a fucking train. And obviously Caltrops is really fucking insane. It has so much versatility for a second tier feat. It's a get off me tool for stalling on a point, using it to enter fights. Well, that's one, that's two, that's three. Caltrops, yippee! Clearing mid lane. Oh, you see, if you drop Caltrops on mid lane, it has a funny effect where any minion stepping on it will instantly fucking die. So if you wanted to clear mid lane like Thanos cleared the Avengers, just and then they're all gone. And you know what? I gotta add one more positive to this. Her executions are so fucking good. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Very little characters in this game have just good executions all around, but NUXIA's are all really good. They all are unique enough where they use her weapons in different ways, all looking really good and really effective. But, yeah, that's the end of the positive notes. I wish I could say more positive things about it, but, Now we get to the bad, and oh man, there is a lot of bad that I can really talk about. Before I begin, I want to say to the all 5 NUXIA mains out there, I respect your grind. To start off, she has absolutely no opener other than her trap, and that's it. Her light attacks aren't enhanced, so one block and her offense is gone. Now, does she need a copy-paste 500 MS bash?
No.
No, fucking god no. Just make her opener lights enhanced so that she can do something else from neutral. Second, her traps, as I talked about before, have a lot of fucking counters to it. Dodging, switching guards, emoting, zones, throwing heavies early, rolling away, you get the point. But how do you buff her traps so that they stay viable but not unfun and overpowered? The thing is, you can't. I mean, you could speed them up again, but who knows what problems that might cause. You know, I've always hated the thought of speeding stuff up because it can sometimes be very troubling. If you speed up attacks over and over and over again, it can lead to some really fucking wonky animations. This is why I truly believe Ubisoft does not want to change NUXIA whatsoever. You have a move that counters blocking and crushing counters. How do you buff a move like that without making it extremely busted? Leave any comments below if you have any ideas. I read all my comments, so I'd love to see what you guys come up with. And remember, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I want to talk about my biggest gripe though with NUXIA, and this doesn't affect the duels players at all, and only the force players. I think truly the most annoying thing about NUXIA is impatient teammates. What do I mean by that? Well, your traps don't confirm anything out the bat. They take around 300 MS to do the actual damage. You see, it's funny because your traps actually have an undocumented effect where it puts your team in an uncontrollable rage to hit your enemies out of your traps. Like, fuck bro, I'm writing this script before I've played any games, but I know for a fact I'm punching the air at the fact that people have ruined my traps over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's not even talking about the zone trap. I think I can wake up, start a company, make millions of dollars, come back to my computer, and the animation would still be playing. She has this really cool property on her finisher heavies where it can grapple opponents. This can lead to, well, massive damage if it lands, and maybe a wall splat if you're in the right spot. But the thing is that everybody just dodges NUXIA finishers. Think about it. If you dodge the attack, you're countering the finisher heavy and the trap. The downside is you get guard broken. Well, would you rather take one regular guard break heavy, or one heavy that can also wall spot you that does major damage, and you know, you also counter the traps? Pick your poison. And that's it. Like, I hate to end it here, but sadly, that's all this hero has to offer, and there's nothing to actually talk about. So I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna ask 2 NUXIA mains who are also streamers on what they think about NUXIA and what they'd want changed with NUXIA. Both are rep 80s, and their channels will be in the description. So we're going to be interviewing 2 players. The first one is AbreakNRun. He is a well-known For Honor streamer and YouTuber. He was the first ever person to ever hit rep 60 on NUXIA, so if you want to go follow him, links are in the description. The second person we're going to be interviewing is Suji the Maiden. They are currently the #1 NUXIA in the world, and as well, their links will be in the description. Thank you both of you for your time and your efforts. Okay, so like, with all the time you played NUXIA, what drew you to her in the first place?
Honestly, it was just a character that was different. When it came down to it, when the wu-lin came out, I was looking for a new main since I originally played Goki. And I saw everyone playing JJ, Tiandi, and Shaolin, but no one was playing NUXIA. And when I realized how much damage that she could do, I was like, I'll just play her like a really low health, old school Goki. And with the like the trap mechanic being so unique and stuff like that, it just added a whole nother layer to the mind games that you could play just like you played old Goki.
And what's the one thing you'd want to see changed about her kit, if you want to see anything changed?
Honestly, if you give her anything else, they would have to nerf her damage. They would have to nerf other things in her kit, because she has all the right damage numbers. She has really gnarly punishes, but it's just the fact that you're going to eat an attack if you go for, you know, if the opponent only does like light parries. And it does make NUXIA very hard to play as. We would need like a change for is like the 3rd tier feat, like the Thread of Fate. It's her unique feat to bind an enemy and the enemy can't run, sprint, or roll. because like it doesn't do much. The one thing that I love doing with that feat though is if I catch someone with the threat of fate while in the middle of a fight and then hit them with the infection, the only way for them to get out of that fight is for their teammate to roll away, and they if they're already stuck in the middle of a fight, they can't roll. So they're like, why aren't you rolling? Because you're infected. I can't.
Alright, hello everyone. My name is Suji. I also go by Scorned Empress on For Honor. So when the question is asked why I play NUXIA and what drew me to her, well, it really just boils down to day one of Marching Fire when it first released. NUXIA drew me in by not only her lovely hook swords, but by how simple she perceived herself of being regarding her appearance, because I knew from the get-go of how amazing the fashion potential was going to be. Also, speaking of fashion, could we potentially perceive some dyeable hair and armor for NUXIA where materials can be applied to metal? I've seen it happen on numerous characters. Pretty please Ubisoft, that'd be great, thanks. Also, another reason is how unique her gimmick is regarding her trap mechanic, being able to change the common structure of the fight due to how traps function. I think that is quite literally what gimmicks and uniqueness should always be about. What I personally would like to be changed about her personally is a way to keep her offense consistent while at the same time not being so vulnerable. The number one demand that I have seen from people is that she should receive dodge cancels on whiff traps. Although I agree that she should receive dodge cancels on whiff traps, it doesn't truly fix the core issues traps face currently. Misparry windows have always been the key reason why traps remain as fundamentally flawed as they are. And I have seen players utilize misparry windows time after time, because traps only catch guard indicators. Red indicators are traps' biggest weakness, believe it or not. And I know players will argue that if I threw a raw heavy, it wouldn't have happened. Well, that may be true, but there is no reason why it should be indefensible, and that there should be a huge risk factor of eating a raw heavy and being locked in my opponent's mix-up, just because I was utilizing the only opener tool she has, and my opponent was intentionally or unintentionally making the wrong read. I'd also like to see a hitbox buff on her side heavies because of the fact that opponents can just dodge between both her heavies and traps at the same early frame. I'd like to also see her chain lights become enhanced due to the fact that getting knocked back into neutral from an accidental block with no proper opener utility at my disposal. Her tier 4 infection should be able to infect other opponents if they are within the infection circle. It would make it more lethal and not just a Warmonger tier 1 because besides being a medium hit stun tag. I'd like to give RaptorX a huge thank you for involving me in this video. I honestly hope these NUXIA changes piqued some of your interest. I obviously have many more ideas towards a NUXIA rework, but I think these ideas should be enough for now. Toodles everyone, and be safe.